Good afternoon. This is the Bar Torah on Parshas Tzav, which is, and it's also the a special parsha, the four parshiyot before Pesach, all in the month of Adar. This is the third of the fourth in this Parshas Parah, which I'll be giving and explaining in more detail shortly. This year, because it's a leap year, the Parshas Parah comes in the week of Parshas Tzav. When I say leap year, that means there's 2 months of Adar instead of one is a 13-month calendar in the Jewish calendar. And the Parsha repeats laws that have been said before, of offering various types of sacrifices. The Oler offering, the Mincha, the Shlamim, peace offering, Chatos, sin offering, and Asham, guilt offering. That's part one. Now, however, what is the difference? Then it was telling the laws to the people. Now it's telling the Kohanim, the priests, the one who actually perform these various services of Voda and offer the sacrifice and do all the things that are necessary from. It's being explained from their point of view. The Parsha then goes on to discuss the preparation for the Mishkan dedication. There is a whole procedure that Moshe takes Aaron and his sons through, each one of 7 days inside the Mishkan. They're not allowed to leave there. And the 8th day, they will take over from Moshe and being the priests and giving the offerings, making all the offerings. Now, I would like to point out that all of these halachas, whether the ones we learned in the previous portion of Vayikra, the obligations of Jewish people, and here, which is the how the Kohanim carry it out, and for that matter, the dedication of the Mishkan, these are all laws that one cannot really derive from human logic. We can understand the fact that if somebody does a guilty thing, the idea behind certain penalty, korbanot, is when the person who did the sin recklessly, negligently, and recklessly, not deliberately, if he or she sees the animal being offered and realizes it should have been him or her being offered, it changes the person's whole perspective immensely. That's one concept. The other idea is that these are the type of commandments we do because Hashem commanded us to do them. Some of them are quite complicated, but this is all in keeping with the fact that Hashem wants to dwell among us. I explained in previous parshas, and the Mishkan is where he's dwelling. And by bringing these korbans and doing all of this, it helps bring Hashem closer to us, and he gives out shefa, positive things to the world. This was also true of the Beis Mikdash, the temple, where it acted as a transmitter for shefa, providence to us. However, since the Mishkan was destroyed, and the temple, when Mishkan was buried, in the temple, first and second were destroyed. We no longer have this transmitter. That's why physical bounty, the everything that Hashem would like to give us, isn't, because without that, we're getting 10% at best, what we would have in the whole world when we did what was proper. That's one concept. Now, the purpose of Mishkan, as I will to review from the previous Devar Torahs, was partially a kapora after we did tshuva for the sin of the Egel Zahav, the golden calf, and therefore we needed to purify the Mishkan, as we see, ultimately when the temple was built, the temple, so before it could become a proper dwelling place for Hashem. And this concept applies in the Bate Mikdashim, the two temples, also, that we indeed have to elevate ourselves and be pure to obtain that. Now, that also ties in nicely with the Mishkan, with the Paradama. Before I'd like to get that, I'd like to take one short concept on this concept of this whole week's Parsha. That not only the laws of sacrifices, whether it's a Thanksgiving offering to Hashem, and which we do, by the way, because which will continue even after Hashem brings Mashiach. We'll do it then, because then we'll have total gratitude to Hashem for everything and for all the things we didn't understand before the coming of the Mishkan. This is based on the idea of Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Zivman Selek Bracha. And just want to give one thought on the Parsha. We learn in Midrash, Guma actually, that just as we have the temple, and then before that, the Mishkan in our world, our physical Olam Hazeh, we also have it in the world above, Lamala, the next world, Olam Haba. And just as we have a Kohen Gadol offering the high priest of making the korbanot, we have the angel, in fact, Michael is the Kohen. This is based on the teachings of the Rekanati and supplemented by a Tosfot. But what it means in practical terms is that everything that happens down here has an equivalence up there. And the angel there brings an offering up there, just like we bring an offering down here to Hashem, we bring an offering up there. And what is that? What is it offering? There's two possibilities of what the offering is. One is that it's the Neshama note of the Tzaddikim, Neshamas of the Tzaddikim, of the righteous individuals. Now, it doesn't literally mean human sacrifice, chas v'shalom, or anything like that. It's talking a different concept altogether. The other one is that he brings lambs and fire and ash. Now, obviously, since this is spiritual, this would be spiritual concept, which we bring in terms we can understand. In any event, I'd like to look at the second one. He says we bring the neshamas of the tzaddikim. What it means is we bring their studying of the laws of korbanot. Now, it's nice that tzaddikim were learning it, but why would he bring that before Hashem? And it explains that if one looks in our whole history of a few thousand years, we're in the temples for a relatively short time, total of about 800 and some odd years. And the Mishkan was before that was there for a few hundred years. So in our whole history, we've been without it. So what is the deeper thing being explained here? That the offerings that are given when there's no real offerings, and that Michael's bringing in the upper world, is the teaching and the learning by the tzaddikim of all the laws of sacrifices. And in fact, we have that concept today. This is why Daf Yomi, where we learn one Daf of Gemara, it's done for another reason. We're learning the kachim, the ones on the sacrifices in the temple and all that. The fifth order of the Talmud and Mishnayos is to show the Shem that we want his temple back. And there's also an Indian to possibility to learn the laws of Tum and Taharos, which we do because, again, we wanted to have the time when there will be Korbanot and there will be the Tuma and Tahara. And therefore, we have this basis also. Now, so what happens? To continue, what happens then is what's going to happen is, as explained, as he brings, as the Rekhanati brings from the Zohar, that out of the Adam, right, are going to be brought in with them. He collects with these people their offerings to the Petach, the opening of the fifth and sixth levels, 4 or 7. Hashem means 6th and 7th heavens. And he then asked them that in the merit of the Avot and the Siddiqim, learning that we should all merit to enter the 7th heaven, so to speak, the highest level. And Bezrat Hashem, that we'll see the full fruition of that shortly. Now, let's look at the Parah. Let's look at the Parshas Parah. Parshas Parah has a similar theme. Again, it has meanings both down here, Olam Hazeh, and in the higher worlds. Now, what is the Parshas Parah? It's dealing with the Parah Adamah, one of the most difficult to understand mitzvahs. There are 2 types of mitzvahs. There's one where we understand it, but we still do it because Hashem commanded us. Those are called mishpat. There's also chok. These are laws that we do because Hashem commands us, but no human mind can logically come up with these concepts. And the strongest of that is the Parah Adamah. Even with the Korbanot, you can understand the thanking Hashem, giving gifts to Hashem, bringing sacrifices because one committed sins or the whole country committed sins, that we can understand. This Parah Adamah is strange because you take a red heifer and you kill it in a pure place outside the camp, and you burn it into its entirety. One takes the ashes and puts them in pure water. And every time somebody becomes tamei by exposure, either by killing, for example, soldiers, or they're in a place where there's a dead body and they become tumat mace, the impurity, before they can go back to the Mishkan or the temple, depending what era it was, they have to purify themselves and be sprinkled twice in 7 days. And it purifies people who are subjected to tumas mace. However, it impurifies people, the people who prepared it. The same ashes and water impurify them. Now, this is a halakha that the nations have made fun of us because it appears to make no sense in any way. Now, I'd like to discuss this based on partially on the teachings of the Bnei Yissaschar, on his Devar Torahs on Parshas Parah. And There's a big question here. First of all, why are we bringing this halacha now? What is what is it doing? Now, why is it a third of the fourth parshas we read in month of Adar, leading up and preparing us for Pesach? The first one was Shabbat Shkalim, which the money raised from that for the Mishkan sanctuary acted as a refuah, a cure against the money, cancel out the money that Haman gave to Achashverosh to be allowed to kill all the Jews on the 13th of Adar. And with Hashem's help, that was prevented. That's the story of Megillah Esther, with the efforts of Mordechai and Esther, which we read this past week on Purim. That's one thing. And we then had Parshas Zachor, which was remembering Amalek, because Haman was a descendant of Amalek, and we see how he was defeated and how Hashem operated everything. Now, this Parshas Parah, this next Parsha, deals with the Parah Adamah. Why is that a preparation? Well, first of all, on one level, it reminds us we have to purify ourselves. We can't do it in the same way as them. Purify ourselves both emotionally and physically and spiritually as we're leading up to the Yom Tov Pesach, where we're going to do the Seder on the first night. And that's one symbol, that's one reason for it. There's also a second reason for it. The second reason for it is that it is also a cure from the Para Adamah, from the, Egel Zahav. Just like in the sin of the Egel Zahav, this is a cure for it. This goes against it. Now, how could this possibly go against it? Acting as a refuah, so to speak, cure for it, because on the earthly level, now I'm going to explain this whole order of Paradama. If one looks at the higher Torah, the Sod, the works of the Makubal Kabbalists, there's deeper explanations which beyond the scope of our Torah. But one of the things given is that we chose openly to sin with the Egel Zahav, the golden calf. Now we're being given a chance to use our free will properly with the Para Adama, red heifer, because it's not being done because we get any benefit from it. It's not being done because we can understand it. It's being done because Hashem requested, and show that we want to get close to Hashem, which will be a kapora for the Para Adama, for the Egel Zahav, and showing us how close we want to get to Hashem, that we want to get closer to Him, because we're working and purifying cells in 30 days from Purim to the Seder, and by doing so, we are being purified. I will give you other examples of how we are purified. As we get closer to Pesach, I will be discussing that in next week's Parshas Shmini. I'll be starting to discuss Pesach also. And we should remember from all this that we should truly follow Hashem because we love Him and believe in Him and will accept all His laws, even if we don't fully understand the reason for them. And I give us a bracha that we all in this month rise spiritually, emotionally, into physical purity as much as we're able to in this era, so that we'll be ready to for the reliving the Exodus from Egypt on the Seder night, good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.